Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Sales Circle podcast. The sales podcast that is designed to help you improve your sales. Now look, whether you're listening to this or watching this over on YouTube as a business owner or an entrepreneur, a CEO, a budding entrepreneur, or even a salesperson, sales professional, we talk about a variety of things in this podcast that are designed to help you improve your sales skills, your sales confidence, improve your mindset, and ultimately help you increase your sales. And thank you, whether you're an avid listener, whether you're a subscriber, or maybe you've stumbled across this podcast for the first time. I truly thank you. My name is Rob Spence, an internationally renowned sales trainer, sales author, sales coach. I have been hosting this podcast now, for many months now. It started, full transparency, a few years ago where we were interviewing some great entrepreneur CEOs. All of those interviews are still available to listen to and watch on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And for the past 6 months, give or take, we're now sort of 21 weeks, 21 episodes in actually. We share advice, guidance, tips through this podcast. Each episode is about half an hour long, give or take, and they're going to be filled full of juicy bits. Just before we go on to today's episode, I do just want to say a massive thank you to you. If you have subscribed to us over on YouTube, I thank you massively. I got a lovely notification the other day that we have hit the mighty 100 subscribers over there and 95,000 views on our videos. So thank you so much. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, that's a very, very small number, However, it is a great achievement for this podcast, considering we've not been going too long. But also as well, if anyone's ever tried to grow anything on YouTube, you'll know that it's quite hard to get that momentum. So if you're one of those 100 people that have subscribed, if you're one of the 95,000 people that have watched the videos, thank you so much. Today, we're going to be exploring sales training, and we're going to talk about the benefits, sometimes the cons, but obviously more than likely the pros of sales training, why you should think about sales training, why sales training is important. This isn't going to be a plug. You know, as I alluded to a second ago, I am a sales trainer myself. This is not going to be half an hour of me going, use me, use me, use me. We're going to explore why sales training is important, but also why potentially people aren't investing in themselves, potentially why they're not investing in sales training, and what we can do to sort of change that. So without further ado, let's crack on. So sales training is a unique term, isn't it? It's in my opinion, the term sales training is very broad because there are a mass of sort of elements, topics, terms, methods we can use when sales training. So when anyone ever says to me, "Oh, can you do sales training?" It's well, yeah, but what do you need? How do things work out? In my opinion, sales training is vitally important for salespeople. Sales is a trade where we don't need any training, where you can fall in a job tomorrow and become a salesperson. As long as you're good at talking, you'll be absolutely fine. And you think of any other job on the market, whether you're a marketeer, or a marketer, maybe is the correct term there, whether you're a plumber, a painter, a decorator, an accountant, HR professional, you go on courses, you get degrees, you continuously learn. Sales still seems to be on the wayside a little bit, where people are like, well, yeah, it's, we don't really train. We let the new salespeople sit with the sales director who's been in the job for 40 years for a bit, and we kind of hope for the best, really. And I want to change that. It's one of the reasons why I got into sales training, myself. Now, some people will go ahead and do their own training. Like if you look at this bookcase behind me, and if you listen to this, obviously do check it out on social media. I've read every single one of these books, and some of them are business related, some of them are marketing related, some of them are mindset related, but probably 90 to 80% of those are sales based. And that's because I heavily invested in myself when I was getting into sales. I could have easily just kept selling for the sake of selling sake and thought I was doing a good job. But I invested in myself. And the very first book that I bought was no different to many people when they first get into their own sales training was, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a great sales book. And that led me on a journey where I invested in my own training. But why? Why should people invest in training? What are the benefits to sales training? Let's explore that for a second. Now, I've got some statistics, as I always like to bring to the forefront. So I've got this first one from Comp Proposals. It says companies that prioritize training are 57% more effective than their competitors. So 57% more effective if you're investing in sales training. I have another one here from Sales and Profit that says effective sales training can lead to a 20% improvement in individual performance. I mean, I think the key word there is effective sales training, just because there is some, bad sales training out there and some bad information that's going around on TikTok in particular. Oh my goodness, we could do a whole episode on that. But a 20% improvement in sales or, in performance is not bad going. I'm no mathematician, but if someone's closing 100 deals a year, if you can get an extra 20 deals from them in that year through training, you're going to take it, right? So that's all about performance. What about revenue? This is a thing that people talk to me a lot about. Sales training from anyone can be expensive. It can be a heavy investment. So what do you get return on that? The average ROI of sales training is an impressive 353%. The average is 353% ROI on sales training. Not a bad investment or a return on investment, if you ask me. Now, also as well, this one here is from LearnHub that go on to say organizations with a sales enablement strategy achieve a 49% higher win rate on forecasted deals. Once again, it goes to show. They do go on to say that if you invest in employee development, it fosters a positive work environment, leading to high job satisfaction and reduced turnover. And I think that's normally the hidden benefit of sales training or training of any ilk, really. People, especially when we talk about sales training, they want to see that ROI. Of course, if I'm spending £100, I want to be seeing £500 back and so on and so forth, right? But what we've got to remember is that sometimes just investing in people gives them a morale boost. It gives them a bit of a benefit. It makes them feel wanted. It makes them feel valued. If you can do that, it then reduces staff turnover, which then lowers your overheads and saves you having to get recruiters in and everything else in between. So it's not always just the ROI. Sometimes it is actually the individual's mindset, motivation, and morale, right? So this one here is from Comp Proposals, and this is a real life example. So there's a mid-sized tech firm that I always wonder what mid-sized means. But they implemented a tailored sales training program. Within a year, they saw a 50% increase in net sales per employee, directly attributed to the enhanced skills and confidence gained from the training. So we can see that actually when you invest in sales training, there are a multitude of benefits there. We've looked at some statistics about ROI where, you're seeing and on average, it's 353%, which isn't to be sniffed at, right? We also know that it can help sales performance. So we're seeing that, it can lead to a 20% improvement in individual performance. Companies are 50% more effective than their competitors. So we can see that thing there. But we've also got to remember that employee satisfaction and the benefits that it has on the employees as well. So look, they're the benefits, and I'm not here to I don't want you to drive into your next sales meeting to listen to this going, yeah, okay, this is a sales pitch. It's not, because now we're going to talk about the drawbacks. What are the drawbacks of sales training? And I've got once again, some statistics, but I'm going to share some real life stories about my impact and some of the drawbacks of training as well. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a second. Just going to quickly pose for some thumbnails. I'll do. So what are the drawbacks of sales training? Surely, Rob, as a sales trainer, there should be no drawbacks of sales training. Well, there are. And, I'll be brutally honest, sales training is not going to fix all of the company's problems. And sometimes I'm called into a company too late. Sometimes I'm called into a company where actually it's not a training issue. It's actually a cultural issue. Sometimes it's a recruitment issue. Sometimes it's just a product issue. Sometimes it's poor management and poor leadership. And they think that sales training is the plaster to fix people. And it's not. Sales training, if delivered properly and focusing on the right elements designed for that industry or sector, 100%, there are great benefits. But sales training should never just be seen as a heroic savior, and it should never be seen as a one-size-fits-all plaster that can solve every problem in the business. As well, I do believe that sales training shouldn't be a one-off thing. Don't get me wrong, I've delivered sales training as one-off, conversations, speeches, keynotes, and everything, 1 hour, a half a day, a full day, whatever. And you can cover off a lot, and you really can. And you can deliver, a lot of the prime foundations of sales and everything. But I always find that actually sometimes the better investment is where things are done longer term, because you build better relationships with those that you are training. You are building a knowledge bank, so the training becomes more personable, and so on and so forth. So let's look at some of these statistics. So sales training can be pricey. It can be expensive. Depends on who you're using. It depends what method you're using. It depends, obviously, sometimes on the quality or quantity of the training, but it can be pricey. And if you've not got the budget, it can hit hard a little bit. This study from sfepartners.com says, comprehensive training programs can be expensive, with companies spending over $70 billion annually on training. I think that's just in the US. So you imagine what that happens in the UK market, in the UAE market, and all the other markets out there and everything else in between. It can be pricey. Of course, once again, if done right, you see that return on investment, and you'll see, that return come through. However, it can be pricey as an initial investment. It can also take up time. Now, when, once again, I've worked with teams and they're like, no, very much, I need my team back at their desk by 10 a.m., by 11 a.m. We need this done and dusted out the door, which I get and I understand. If anything, as a sales trainer, you've got to understand you need their sales team on the floor selling, right? But it can take time. So when already sales reps are already busy, and we know that normally, look at this statistic here from Numeric, only 39% of their time is normally spent actively selling. When you then add in training sessions, it can null and void that. Once again, my argument to that will be, you plant the seeds for tomorrow, right? Now, normally, and this is like what I said earlier, if you aren't investing in longer term sales training, sometimes you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So this one from Rain Group Sales Training says, without proper reinforcement, 84% of sales training content is forgotten within 3 months. And, I alluded to that earlier on. If you're just doing a one-hit wonder, of course, you'll get some great value. But people forget things. People fall back into their own ideologies. Those habits are broken. If you want to get a six-pack for the summer, you train for, it depends on your current fitness condition, of course, but, anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes more if you're starting from scratch. You need to really watch your diet, and you need to maintain that consistently until those habits are born. It's the same with sales training. You don't go to the gym once and go, yep, I've now got my six-pack, I know what I'm doing. Or, you don't go for one personal training session and think you know it all about, personal training. You go for a longer time period. So we've talked about a lot of pros and cons. I'm going to give you some really honest feedback, some really honest insights as to how you can make sales training more effective and help you see that return on investment just grow and grow and grow. So if you are considering sales training of any ilk, and if you're looking at any sales trainer, here's what I've got here. Sort of three ideas in which you can put into play today to make sure you see that return on investment come through. I said earlier, and I keep banging the drum for it, make sure that you invest in sales training for a longer term, or you sort of invest in sales training as part of a longer term learning and development strategy, okay? If you are insistent on having one sales training session, it will work. However, could just be like throwing petrol on a fire. Yes, it will burn brighter for, 3 months as per the statistics we just said, allude to. But actually, what can we do to add logs to that fire? What can we do to add more kindling? How can we keep that fire burning for longer? So if you are looking at sales training, my advice is to build it into a longer term thing. Now, there's a number of ways you can do that. Speak to your sales trainer. How can you take a 4-hour session and split that up into 4 1-hour sessions. Sometimes even just doing that can add to long-term continued success. If you are working with a new team and perhaps you're looking at getting that sales trainer to deliver sort of like a foundation of sales training course, what further investment can you make, maybe, quarterly, to see better success? Think about how you can get your team into the gym more often and more regular to see those longer term results. Always get your sales trainer to customize the training as best as possible to your industry, to your sector, or at times to your target audience. Whenever I deliver sales training, I always say to my clients, look, we tailor everything to you, your needs. We'll never hit it bang on, especially if it's a sector or an industry we've never worked on. But I spend a lot of time researching the companies that I'm delivering the training for, their target audiences, and the challenges they're facing. Don't get me wrong, I have courses that I can pull off the shelf tomorrow and I can deliver today to, and it will still be a good sales training course. Of course it will. And that's why I've got online sales training courses available, because those sales training courses, you'll still get the same value, but it won't necessarily be customized. When you're not customizing sales training packages, you are leaving the delegates, you are leaving the individual to have to try and work out that training into their own scenario, into their own job, into their own career. For some people, that's fine. For others, it's not. So when you are speaking to your sales trainer, whoever you're using, make sure they try and customize it as close as possible to you, your company, your industry, your sector, and at times your target audience. And of course, always get behind your sales trainer. Always get behind them. There has to be a series of content and there has to be a series of parallel running between the training and what leadership wants. If there's any discontent, if there's any, what's the word I'm looking for? What happens when two trains disconnect? Derailment, maybe? I don't know. If there's any sort of split there, it can get really, really hard. I always advise management to get involved in the training with a caveat. Management should be involved in the training, but shouldn't necessarily have a vocal viewpoint. They should sit at the back and be quiet and shut up. Because that sounded really rude and aggressive. I didn't mean it so abrupt. Because when you are getting management involved, management can then understand what's going through the training. So then when the management or the leadership hears that training in play on the phone, on a Zoom call or on the field, they understand the theories, the psychologies, the mindsets behind the sales training that's ongoing, right? So I believe that the leaders should get involved in the training. Once again, with a caveat, sometimes leaders and managers can sort of speak up a bit too loud. They can have their say. They can overrule the training a little bit, which once again, it's like having mummy and daddy saying different things to a child, right? Well, the trainer said this, the manager's saying this, the delegate in the middle is like, I don't really know who to keep happy, and they just kind of give up, right? So make sure that your training is continuous and is habitual and is ongoing. Make sure that it's customized for you and your needs, and make sure that you've got support from management. Okay, guys, so look, here it is. Here's the cheeky plug. As a sales trainer myself, I'd love to work with you one-on-one, or I'd love to come out and train your team. I do, however, even if you just want to dip the toe in the water a little bit, I have an array of online sales training courses covering everything from the writing of an elevator pitch to objection handling to prospecting and everything else in between. If you are looking at sales training and are considering sales training and maybe just want to try something that's quite a bit more cost effective and can be done in your own time, then those online sales training courses are absolutely ideal. There's a number of ways you can get involved. Just head on over to Paragon Sales Solutions, click on the button that says online courses, and you'll be taken to a variety of links full of all of my courses. Or send me an email, thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com, or send us a message on any of our social media platforms, and I'll be sure to send you the link. We move on to our listeners' questions. Now, I do just want to have a quick shout out for last week's episode because I absolutely loved it, and we've already planned in another episode in 4 or 6 weeks' time. If you missed it, go ahead and check it out. I'm going to start doing this a bit more regularly, where we spend a whole episode answering your questions, because I absolutely loved it. And I don't think I realized how much I did love it until actually I started editing the video up. I was like, wow, Great questions. I loved being able to think off the cuff. I don't see the questions until I sit down here in the seat. That's my paper rustling there. I didn't, there was no preparation. I just printed them all off and read them there and then. So do keep tuned. But in every episode, we read through your listeners' questions. If you do have a burning question, maybe you've got a problem, maybe you've got an issue, maybe you've got a burning, a prospect that you just can't close, send me in your questions. Just email thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com, or you can find us on social media, whether that be Instagram, X, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, and send me a message. Our first one is from Anonymous. Our budget is tight. How can we justify the expense of sales training? Always a tough one to look at. Now, I'm going to sort of really cheekily plug a lot of the statistics we shared during the pros of sales training. Normally, on average, sales training gets you an ROI. What was it again? 353%. It's a big return on investment, right? And in theory, we know that once again, I can't remember the statistics now. A lot of people, when they're going through training, they will uplift their performance and results, okay? Although there is that initial cost, you've got to think of the longer term investment. If you are sort of struggling on budget because of cash flow, or it's sort of like your last ditch attempt to try and make a success of your business, I would personally say don't do it, because there's better things that you can be doing with time, with budgets, to help you increase your leads and to help you close those leads to then make you more money, okay? But if there is a training budget involved, go ahead and do it. As I just mentioned in my cheeky plug, sales training can sort of up and down no matter how you do it. When I sort of look at my sales training, obviously I have to take into account my time, my travel time. I have to take into account resources, books, workbooks. That then incurs a bigger cost than if you buy one of my sales training courses online. Once again, I'm sure they're around, give or take £50, give or take. So once again, you can look at other options that are out there. I hope, however, that listening to the Sales Circle does help. This one is from James. We tried sales training before, but the effects didn't last. What went wrong? Yeah, tough one, James. It's tough without really knowing about your team, knowing about what you're selling, know about the training that you went for, and the timescales involved. Maybe, you mentioned here, we tried sales training before. It sounds like you only did sort of like a one-off thing, which, as I said earlier, can actually be detrimental to your budget and actually be a detrimental investment. Always make sure that training is a longer-term thing. Spread it out as long as possible. How do we measure the success of a sales training program? This one's from Luke. So, look, you can break it down. It depends to some degree on the training, whether it's just a general training session, whether it's sort of objection handling focused, whether it's lead generation focused, telephone sales focused. Make sure you do put into place some KPIs. One of the key things, in my opinion, is to get feedback from your individuals in the training, your delegates, because they'll be able to tell you firsthand what they learned, what they didn't learn, what they wish would have done better, and the improvements they made. And then just track those numbers. If the training was focused around objection handling, how many more deals have those people closed because they were able to handle objections, and so on and so forth. So I do recommend, however, putting into place some form of KPI so that, 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever, down the line, you can say, actually, was that a good, solid return? Let's move quickly on to our book recommendation of the week. So this week's book recommendation comes in the form of Everybody Works in Sales by a good friend of mine, Niraj Kapoor. Now, this book now is older than I thought it was. I saw it on my bookshelf just before I sat down to record this. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give Niraj a shout out, because he's honestly one of the greatest guys you will ever come across in terms of sales training. So allow me to introduce Niraj a bit better, actually, because he deserves a bit more credit than that. Niraj has gone on to build a formidable career in sales training, LinkedIn training, in speaking, and is a LinkedIn top voice on sales. Now, Niraj comes from a history of corporate selling, corporate sales, down in the big smoke. I think it was like 23 years he was down in London. And now, I've known him, 7 or 8 years, give or take, and he delivers great sales training to teams all over the world, okay? And from my understanding, this was his first sales book. I think there's a couple more thereafter. And what I love about this book here, it came out, I think, 2018, maybe 2017. potentially. Niraj has a wonderful way of providing sales lessons in the form of real life scenarios, real life stories, and his ability to story tell throughout is fantastic. And this is, you know me, if you've listened to any of these other book recommendations, I like a book where you swept away. It's not a book where you go, you must do this, you must do that, don't do this, try this instead. You read this as a story, and you ingest that information, and it's great. I'm very fortunate and lucky to have a signed copy, which is pretty cool. Signing it in 2018, which goes back, shows how far back this goes. But a little quick bit of the blurb from small businesses, big pardon, containing 27 valuable lessons plus 17 interviews with experts. Everybody Works in Sales combines unique storytelling and personal development to ensure you have the tools you need to do better in your career. A fantastic read, some great stories, and I think a book that every salesperson, every business owner, every entrepreneur should have on their bookshelf. So as always, I'll drop a link to this in the show notes below. So whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your content, check the links below. There'll be a link to order your very own copy. Niraj, hope you're listening. Hope you're well. We must catch up soon. This book brought back, when I was flicking through it, has brought back a lot of memories, and I wish you all the best in your future career. Looks like you're absolutely smashing it. Well, that takes us to the end of another episode of the Sales Circle podcast. Goodness, these fly by. I've just checked my little time on my little monitor there. 28 minutes, give or take, we have been sat down recorded. Actually, I think probably a little bit less than that, because 2 minutes of the footage was me just faffing around trying to get everything set up. But all the same, we've been sat down here for a long time now. As I said at the start of the podcast, we've explored now the pros and cons of sales training. There's definitely a lot of pros there, isn't there? You can see that return on investment. You can see the performance there. As a sales trainer myself, I've seen people really take their business and their careers to the next level. Niraj, whose book I just shouted out there, is a fantastic sales trainer. And I'm sure if he was sat down here next to me, he'd tell me the same. We've looked at the cons. We've looked at how you shouldn't just sort of have a minimalist kind of investment. You shouldn't just see it as a one-hit wonder. And it certainly shouldn't be seen as the miracle solution to all of your problems either. Please do hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. Make sure you're following us everywhere. The more people that do, the bigger the budget we've got to get in more guests and to improve kit, improve studio sets and everything else in between. So please hit that follow button or hit that subscribe button. As a reminder, these episodes come out every single Thursday without fail. Audio lands at 5:30 in the morning. For those of you eager to drive in to the office, nice and early, you can listen along then. The video always comes out on YouTube at 4:30 in the afternoon. Thank you so much for tuning into the Sales Circle podcast. As always, I've been Rob Spence, and until next time, all the best. And that's it for another episode of the Sales Circle. Make sure you hit that follow button, join us over on social media, and we'll see you next week.